firing off in all directions already.
If you got cured of salmonella in 1692, you probably were on trial to be a witch.
Yeah. If you survived salmonella, you were then hung for being a witch.
100%.
Can't win for losing.
Can't win for losing. It's all...
Welcome to the EasySpeak Speakeasy.
You've unlocked the door to unfiltered mental health and wellness conversations. Here we are again at the Speakeasy. The Spookeasy.
Woo!
Ooh, it's the Spookeasy.
I like it.
I like it.
I like.
Oh, that was so creepy. OMG.
Catch me in my bushes scaring the kids on Halloween. It's not a cute holiday.
Listen, I have my things about Halloween. I am definitely the person who turns their lights off and may not leave a bucket of candy
Long blink.
on the front steps.
Do you watch the kids to see if anybody comes and just steals the whole first?
Listen, to each their own. Whatever. I'm not putting out another bucket.
I used to put a bucket out.
Yeah.
And I would take the kids trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
And Aiden used to always make a sign
Yeah.
that says,
We're watching you.
Take one. No, he would say, take one candy. Jesus is watching.
Jesus is watching.
No, it would say, love thy neighbors. Jesus is watching.
Oh.
Take one.
Oh, that's actually a really good sign. That will induce a little bit of guilt, perhaps.
I was like, what do you Catholic?
Somebody might
like,
say,
yeah.
well, Jesus would not present me with this whole opportunity if he didn't want me to take it all.
He wants me to live in abundance.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Michelle, we need a scripture about abundance right now.
Michelle's like, I'm not. We don't have time.
I don't have time to do that.
But you know, every year around this time, I always feel like I can more easily slip into, like, I do have a little like esoteric side of me that I feel like I can embrace a little bit more during this time, you know, like with putting out like decor and like skulls and like getting in a little bit more into like my witchy self, which always also makes me think about like going to Salem, which I will never do in October, no matter how fun it looks, because there's so many people there. But the rich history there.
Been?
Yes, I have family that lives in Salem.
No,
so
I mean
like,
during October.
I have not been during October.
You have to go once.
No,
what's wrong with you?
I'm all set. That's too many people. It's not even worth it.
Just go.
It's spooky year round there because of the history. Like I feel like
it's a different thing though.
I feel like I don't care about the novelty of it as much as like the history. Like that is a spooky place. Like there's so much that happened there. You know, it's like kind of like the front door of American history, you know, on the North Shore.
The patriarchy was running wild.
The patriarchy was running wild like, with the witch hunts.
What did you say, woman?
Yes.
She's a witch. Hang her. I'm like,
yeah.
These history books are wrong about these women.
So there's like, I was reading about it because I was like, you know, we always hear about like the witch hunts, right? Which is kind of like what we're talking about right now. And, you know, I started delving a little deeper into like the history of it. So it was like back in the 1600s, so like beginning of America, pretty much time. And, you know, there was a lot of stuff happening around then, but it like, they had like a special court that convened in Salem that tried over 200 people. And Salem, for those of you who don't know, it's like a small town. It's not a big place. And so even back then, it was probably even smaller. So they tried over 200 people for witchcraft, which, you know, were for, you know, they kind of said witchcraft was any, like people who would be herbalists nowadays would be considered a witch, or somebody who talks about manifestation, or even someone who prays, and tries to exert their will onto what happens around them. So of those 200 people that got tried, 20 people got convicted and executed as a result. And, it just like so spooky, but also just like made me think about just like how such a small town, everyone could rally behind this. Like they convened a tribunal. There were people who were like heads of this that like truly believed, and like it caught on like wildfire, and that to me feels very akin to a lot of the stuff that's happening for us modern day, in terms of like there's mass hysteria about various things constantly because of social media. Like we've talked about this a lot, but like the consequences of which can be very dire. And I feel like, especially from like a mental health standpoint, that's not something that we like examine so much, like mass hysteria and like the power of fear, right? And how fear influences us in our decisions, and how much anxiety and fear are tied, and how anxious we are as a community and population. We talked a lot about pandemic trauma. How does that manifest in the things that we believe and the decisions that we make as a result that could literally be life altering for people? Like my brain was like, it's all connected. Salem to now, like there's a lot of things that are different, but there's a lot of shit that's still the same.
Yeah, time is just a construct.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many. Oh, well, since you're picking up your drink, let's have a little cheers.
A little cheersies.
A little cheers. A little witch's brew.
That was the last sips.
Witch's brew? Oh. Okay, this is just our classic espresso martini then.
It's it.
No problem.
Witch's brew number 2. Witch's brew number 2.
We're not going to call it magic potion because it was on the side of that stupid cup.
Oh.
It can be podcast potion.
Podcast potion. There we go.
Perfect
podcast potion.
AKA classic espresso martini. Espresso. Every now and then I'll be talking fast and I'll say espresso.
I know, it's like so cringe.
Certain people in my life that are like, espresso!
I know,
I'm
exactly.
Like, I was just...
It's like when people say...
expressing through the sentence. So, like... I didn't get every single thing.
It's like when people say salmon. I'm like, oh.
Salmon. You have to go out of your way to say that incorrectly. Salmon.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. We're not judging.
That doesn't even sound like something I would like to eat.
I know.
Salmon.
You want some salmon? Salmonella, for short. Salmonella for long. Anyway, moving on.
We're aspiring off in all directions already.
If you got cured of salmonella in 1692, you probably were on trial to be a witch.
Yeah. If you survived salmonella, you were then hung for being a witch.
100%.
Can't win for losing.
Can't win for losing. It's all the same.
Okay, back to, I have no clue what I was saying.
So we were talking about Salem witch trials. We were talking about mass hysteria. We're talking about how time is simply a construct, because the same factors that, contributed to the Salem witch trials happening also happen around us all the time in present day.
I think the point is stop judging people.
I know. I wish it were that simple.
It is.
We are just such...
Even though we just judge people that say
salmon. We are just such complex...
Like espresso.
Human beings. Espresso. like people believe what they believe, right? And a lot of times they believe what they believe for the better. Like the people who believe these people were witches were scared and they were trying to protect their families and their community from this malevolent being, you know, or entity. And like
our enunciation and pronunciation today is on par.
Yes.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, you know, it's spooky season.
Yeah.
It's like
there's a lot of energy in this house.
Yes, there's been a lot of people coming in and out. So,
Lots
you know.
of things going on.
Yeah.
I will say that how we talk about, we see those things that happened in the past happening in present day. And for me, it brings up that the challenges that people had around mental health existed all that time ago. Like, this is not new, right? Like, people, I think, have a tendency to, I hear people a lot, especially when it comes to kids and like a kid that may be exhibiting behaviors. People will say like, oh, the kids these days, or the parents these days don't know how to raise their kids, And I think, no, like, these challenges were happening a long time ago. Yeah. There just weren't names for them, right? Like, it's in the same way that people died a long time ago of cancers and, you know, different types of diseases, flus, and people didn't know what it was, right? Like, there were lots of different types of quote-unquote plagues and other things that happened in history. And, like, as we have learned more about illnesses and the human body and all of these things, it's like, oh, that thing was actually the flu, you know, so that thing was actually COVID, right? Like, we didn't know what that was from the beginning. So it's like these things, I feel like, are, it's really easy to look at like, oh, we're seeing it now. But I also think it's important to really remember that these are like the challenges of the human experience, I think. And some of those are mental, some of those are physical, some of those are spiritual. And so we really have to think about like the trajectory. And I think this is why it's also important to learn about your family's history if you can, if you have access to your family's history. You know, did people in your past that you didn't know, relatives or distant relatives, did they suffer from a mental health need, or you know, were they outcast from your family for some reason? Like, maybe it's worth exploring what that is, that everybody was like, she's a witch and she was casting spells, so the whole family stays away from her. But it was like, actually, she had psychosis, and so she was just like left on her own to suffer, and nobody knew what that was back then.
That's so interesting to think about, like, what percentage of those people were actually suffering from what we modern day know as psychosis. You know, that's really interesting. I think for me, as I was like thinking about this, you know, also just from a historical standpoint, thinking about all of the things that were happening simultaneously at that point in time that contributed to it. So like you just said, like, there's so many aspects of being human. There's the spiritual, there's the personal, there's the social, right? And just thinking about times when there's like political upheaval paired with like deep beliefs in something, paired with, you know, phenomena happening that we don't know anything about, right? Like, you know, even modern day times, thinking about how COVID deeply divided our country, you know, even more so than it already was. And almost like across the globe, really, because there were people who truly believed COVID was a threat, and then there were also people who truly believed that it wasn't. And then, like, there were cultural differences along those lines that were highlighted, you know, and then, you know, thinking about it, you know, from that standpoint in modern day, you know, and knowing that we're heading into yet another political season, where there's going to be like rhetoric, there's going to be stuff being, talked about in the media. And, we've talked about it from a mental health standpoint in terms of our own consumption as individuals and modulating that and doing our research. But, I think less often talked about is that like downstream effect that we don't always see, but that is like a thread of like cultural shift that happens, and so like, I think one of the things that surprised me about the witch hunt trials, and then I thought, was kind of like a redeeming thing that like helped to reinstill hope, because I've only ever heard of the fact that it happened, it was horrific, people lost their lives. But the other thing that happened is that the people who were on that tribunal, who they realized later that they messed up, they were like, oh, wow, like all of us converged on this one particular aspect of our society.
Women.
Yes, women, because we were stressed and, whatever the case may have been. And like, they apologized and like retributions to the families, which is never going to be enough for lives lost, right? For those 20 families that lost someone. And there were witch hunts all across Europe too. It wasn't just a Salem thing. But, I think that is also something that, I want to always like bring forth and illuminate, like those growth points in human evolution, that like through that pain and through the suffering and the trauma, that there's always opportunity to be better, and so I just thought that was interesting, just even thinking about like today that, there are people who voted a certain way in a certain election and saw what happened afterwards and now are able to say, I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm going to do something else this time, And those are like the people who are like the real agents of change, who are helping to turn the tide versus the people who like are just stuck in their belief and like unwaveringly so.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I also think, just as like a one step aside to that, is like not just presidential elections, but the local elections. I think people really learned that it's important to pay attention to what local leaders are doing, especially when it comes to mental health care and resources and the things that are going to like directly impact, each individual person's vote.
Yeah.
That is really something that people need to pay attention to, because money funnels from all over the place, but like in terms of your day-to-day life, most of that is happening by like your local leaders. And so, I know my local votes are going to be swinging.
Yeah. Swang that pen.
Swinging this election season.
Yeah.
I love to talk about mental health and voting, but maybe that's the next.
No, that could be we could talk about that for like an hour.
Coming soon.
Coming soon
to a Speakeasy podcast episode near you.
I was thinking about like what modern parallels would be like concretely to like the witch hunts, and I was thinking about, there's one particular candidate in particular who likes to use it as like a way of scapegoating. But I was thinking about like cancel culture, like as like a modern day parallel to the witch hunts, where, you say something a certain way or without the right considerations or whatever, and you're like canceled.
Yeah.
And it's like there's, you don't get like a fair trial. Nobody's like, oh, this person was a human who like said something the wrong way or like just had an off day. It's like, no, you directly offended this group of people, you're done. And like, I feel like that is very much akin, because that can literally ruin somebody's life. Like you may not lose your life per se from something like that, cancel culture, but like people have lost their careers, they have lost their means of income and living because they said the wrong thing and it went viral online, and now they're done. And I was thinking about that because I've always been like very anti-cancel culture. I'm always like, okay, like somebody said something controversial, like can everyone like put on a
Chill
helmet.
fireman.
Put on a helmet, like relax. You know what I mean? Like, why is everyone getting canceled, you know, because they said whatever?
Yeah.
You know, like, let's have a conversation about it, you know? So I thought that was really interesting. And it's like a thing that's continuing to happen, you know, throughout social media. And it bothers me from the extent that I feel like it's just a continuation of people being tone deaf to the human experience and just looking at it from their own vantage point, which is like the actual thing that a lot of the time people are fighting against. They're fighting for inclusion while being exclusionary.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about what feels like the witch hunt on women's rights. You know, like overturning of Roe v. Wade and, you know, all of these different states are now like really, I mean, there are some states that are going wild over women's rights around their body and their choices around, you know, pregnancy and what to do. And I think that is just, you know, when you're like being like, oh, if you're an Uber driver and you're driving somebody to the clinic and you report them, we're going to give you a reward. I'm like, hello?
I know.
Are you okay?
I know. That feels very much like a witch hunt. It's like, just relax.
Yeah.
Like, you already said it's illegal. Somebody's finding themselves in dire straits. They got to figure it out. Like,
yeah. Just the fact that it's illegal, I can't even believe.
I know.
I never thought that I would see that
I know.
overturned. Ever.
Yeah.
Sip of my espresso.
I'm very shocked that that was overturned. I mean, and also, you know, I mean, I have my own beliefs on the subject.
I know, this is one that could go down.
I know.
Could go down in the podcast. Go down in the podcast.
I have my own beliefs about the subject, you know, and I am very much like.
Don't get into a losing conversation with me.
I am very much a believer. I ain't never scared. Michelle says she gonna jump in. She said, I'm gonna jump in.
I don't care.
Jump in. I am a very.
I'm gonna pet my cat.
Pet your cat. your emotional support cat. Zero flesh and fur.
That's right.
Skeleton of emotional support, which sometimes feels like the mental health infrastructure in this country.
It's a representation of the mental health.
What's missing from this picture? This is a cat, but is it fully a cat?
Where is the flesh?
Where are his eyeballs? Well, how does he know where he's going? He doesn't.
Can he think?
We should take this with us to the State House when we go do our petitioning for mental health.
Also, a representation of an unborn fetus that somebody is trying to act like.
Oh no! Do not go there with me. We're not doing that. Why would you do that?
I'm just saying. You were gonna go there.
No, I wasn't actually. I was simply gonna keep it at this.
It's okay, Diana.
I'm just gonna keep it at this. Okay, when it comes to
coming in hot,
any topic that is controversial, abortion being one of them, I think that is that much more important for everyone to take a second to try to understand the other side. Yes. Of the argument. Because I think far too often, especially with this topic, people have their beliefs and that's it. On both sides. And I, for one, have explored both sides.
There is a right and a wrong, though.
Well, that's what people say, on both sides. Literally. And so I want to know, if I'm over here, I want to know why you think it's right. Because that might make a difference for me.
Well,
you know.
Wait, are we talking about specifically about this topic?
Well, yeah. I mean, this topic, but I think it carries throughout. Like, I think it's just a good rule of thumb. Like, you know, you could believe that something is right even from the depths of your soul as a moral compass thing and still try to understand. I think that's possible, to still try to understand why somebody else might think and feel the way that they do, even if you don't agree.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like where we continue to be at a standstill, why things like witch hunts, modern day or past, continue to be able to take root and catch fire, is because people are so like in their tunnel vision about how things are supposed to be and what's right, and how, like, you know, when it touches us from an emotional standpoint, you know, getting back to like a mental health aspect of the conversation, it's harder for us to like take in information, integrate it, figure out where it sits within us and our own thought process, and make a decision from there.
I think the thing about witch hunts and other types of what? Do you have a problem with my hat?
The way it's staring at me right now?
Yeah, don't fuck around.
Okay. Listen.
Don't
Animals
fuck
love me.
around, bitch.
Dead or alive.
Don't fuck around, bitch.
That would have got me fucking hung. Animals love me, dead or alive.
Yeah, you'd have been immediately. You would have been pulled right out of here mid-podcast. They would have took our recordings and everything.
As evidence.
I think the thing about any topic that can fall under like a, you know, quote unquote witch hunt, is when, for me, when like now anybody, person or persons, is now exerting their beliefs, power, whatnot, into somebody else's personal choices. This is where I feel like we are off the bandwagon, right? And so I feel that way around Roe v. Wade and all the things like that. I feel that way about mental health care, right? There's a lot of areas, as you know, in mental health where it's like people try to exert their perceived power into somebody's life. Like, I'm the teacher in this classroom and I think this kid needs to be on medication, or, you know, and then you get a school that's going to stand behind that and be like, well, this kid can't come back to school until you put them on a stimulant. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, now what?
I love that. As a clinician, getting a note from the teacher being like, I believe this child needs Adderall. I'm like, hello.
I'm like, I believe you didn't go to school for this.
Exactly. What?
Also, what do the parents think?
Exactly. Now I'm taking the parents and I'm telling them.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what we're gonna have to do.
Right.
Because they've already decided what they believe about your child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel like for me, that's when, and it's with pretty much any topic. Yeah. Where I feel like people start to do that, I automatically start acting like this cat. My spine does this.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
I've seen it.
Like, I've
seen it.
I cannot deal with like somebody else's personal freedoms, personal choices
being infringed upon.
Yeah, infringed upon, or
but like, what say
somebody
you
not being able to like take the time to think through their own process.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, yo.
A phrase created by the fucking patriarchy.
But speaking to what you're talking about, though, that's really what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to figure out what you want to do on an individual basis and have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, but then every word that was written after that was like, as long as we say it's okay. Filling up your cup.
Because we say often, fill up your cup, drink out your butt. What? When I saw the plastic fangs hit the coffee, I knew we have reached a new level on this podcast. Nosies with the fucking skeleton cat. Ooh, Eskimo cat. This is the kind of cat that Kristi can tolerate, by the way. This is.
There's 100% no motherfucking dander on this bitch. That's why it's allowed in my house.
This cat.
The only
is
thing
allowed.
this cat needs is Kevin's whiskers.
He had such
If
good.
it had Kevin whiskers, it would be the best thing ever. That's
So
the
you-
only amount of hair.
So
I
you really
can
want a
use.
hairless? You want a hairless cat?
No,
You don't want a cat at all. Anyway,
I don't want a fucking cat.
what I was saying was,
To be clear,
what say you?
life, liberty, and the pursuit.
I wish I was wearing a
happiness.
freaking George Washington fucking thing
I know,
right now.
you're really turning into a fucking pilgrim.
What say?
Come on, Christopher Columbus.
What say? What say you?
Where's your monocle?
What say you about a phrase that I feel like we say often at Pinnacle, or like, you know, that we spirit that we embody, which is that like the individuals make up the whole, right? So like when we do community events, right, where we're saying we're impacting individuals, which is then going to have that ripple effect out into the community. When we say things like we can't be doing things that are infringing on people's personal freedoms, but then we're also saying that individual choices, right, like the healthiest, the least healthy member of our community is going to have an impact on the larger community, right? So a lot of our work has been helping to cultivate well-being for everyone, right? And so we see that like connection between the individual and the whole. So like, how does that fit in with, and I don't know if there's an answer, right? But how does that fit in with like when it comes to legislation and policies and tax dollars and what gets allocated where? You know, I think that's like continues to be the challenge of society, is figuring out all of the different ways that those interplays happen and making everyone happy from this most minute level all the way up to the most macro level, you know?
What's your question?
So, I mean, like when you, like, so like you just said, like, you know, infringing on personal freedoms or happiness. Yeah. How does that correlate with like the larger society in your mind?
Maybe it's the espresso martini, but I do not understand what you're asking me. I can't wait for this to be on the podcast.
This is gonna be so good. I mean, I'm just thinking like okay.
Give me an example.
Okay, so
talk slowly to me.
Okay. Okay. Let's take it back down to earth. Because I'm like way up here with it.
I'm just saying,
yeah, like be a little more concrete. So like we were talking. Okay, so we're talking about abortion, right? Okay. And how it's a woman's right to abortion, right?
To decide if she wants to have that cat or not.
If she wants to have that cat or not. And the procedure that she needs to undergo in order to decide not to have that cat or not may or may not be paid for by tax dollars, which is a collective situation. Okay. Right? Yeah. So how do we reconcile that when there are people who don't want their tax dollars to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I feel like it's not always as black and white as we make it. And sometimes that can be challenging.
So I feel like on that, this is where it gets convoluted, is because people like to reach into like a system and pull out one thing and be like, but what, this thing? Yeah. Right? Yeah. But like we all pay taxes into all of the different things. Right. And like most of us have no idea what all of the different things are. It's true. Like all this money is going everywhere.
And we just know that we get a paycheck and
we know like
too much of it comes out for taxes.
And not enough of it is going to Social Security. Right. So like, right? So like what, right? It's like, so these are like all the things, right? But like, I think we as a collective are like, we're putting tax money into the
The pot.
infrastructure
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Right.
So if I'm going to take this cat and decide that I'm going to abort the cat before it's an actual cat. See what I did there?
This is where we differ.
What happens is
It's a cat.
many people it's not a cat.
It's a
till
cat.
It's a cat.
It's a cat. A cat can't be a cat before it's a cat. It can't not be a cat before it's a cat. If it's a cat from start to beginning.
That candle
It's a cat when it dies. It's a cat when it's born. It's a cat before it was born.
Was this candle a candle when it was
A piece of wax?
wax and a little string next to it?
When that candle is completely burnt out, are you gonna look at that and be like, that was a piece of wax, or are you gonna be like, that was a candle that was burnt out?
I'm not talking about when somebody dies.
Start to finish.
That's the end of something.
It's a continuous.
Not the beginning.
The end and the
Nice
beginning
try.
are very.
What
The end and the beginning.
No. What in the fuck?
You can't have an end without a beginning.
Did you ever take a debate class?
You can't have an end
You
without a
never did.
beginning, can you?
I can
You
tell.
can't. You can't.
That is not an answer to this question.
Well, it is. It's the answer.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna send this directly to a debate professor so he can tell you that that's not
A debate professor.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to check their
A
credentials.
professor of debate.
Okay.
Michelle even laughed. That never happens.
A professor of debate.
Okay,
Okay.
going back.
Yeah.
I love how far off topic we are, but we're on
It doesn't
topic.
matter. We're on topic.
It's a social fear.
Yes.
It's a social fear.
Exactly.
So, from my perspective,
Yeah.
if I decide that I'm not having this almost
The pre-cat.
I'm
Let's
not
call it a pre-cat.
I'm not having what could be a cat,
Yeah. The pre-cat.
right? Now, if I'm somebody who couldn't potentially even afford to have an abortion,
Mm-hmm.
am I going to be able to afford to care for a cat? Probably not.
Nope.
So if you really want to actually look at this through like the lens of like the tax dollars that we put into an infrastructure,
Yep.
at the end of the day,
Yep.
me going and having an abortion
Mhm.
is actually saving
Mm-hmm.
a lot more money
Mm-hmm.
than me having the cat and
Right.
having to take care of it.
I agree.
And by me taking care of it, I mean whatever system is going to support it for a minimum of 18 years.
Right. And me as the mediator, because I 100% hear that, right? It's like if we're going to say you can't do this, we can't also say have the child and you're on your own, right?
But that's the problem.
Then for me, it's to the other side saying, what are we doing for these people who find themselves pregnant but are not able? What are the programs we're putting in place? What are the supports we're putting in place? How are we helping to create healthy, happy families if we're forcing them to be in existence?
And I think in our line of work and working with families,
Yeah.
we see the downstream effects of that.
Yeah.
Is families who are living in poverty or have kids with mental health needs that they can't afford to pay for what those needs are, or there has been a significant amount of trauma that has happened.
Yeah.
All of those things that start to cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And are those interventions, one, even accessible
Right.
for those who could afford them?
Right.
And we always know that in the way that the world is currently, the United States is currently running, right now those services get prioritized to people who can pay for them through their private insurance.
Yep. Or out of pocket. Yep.
Right? And then after, everybody else gets the scraps
Yep.
through
Whatever is
government
left.
assistance programs.
Trickle down economics, baby.
Exactly.
Look it up. Mm-hmm.
So, look it up. So, like,
Burn it down.
what are we really doing? Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
I know.
You know, and
Yeah.
so that is like the problem. Like,
Yeah.
why are we being like, have this litter of cats?
Yeah.
Because they're cats.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the cats are there, and everybody is like, I mean, you're gonna feed them better or
Good-
not
good
take
luck.
care of them better, and like, why don't you have
Good
the best
luck with your
everything
cats.
for your cats? Like,
Yeah.
are you okay? Like, you know what? I don't think you're taking good enough care of your cats, so
We're gonna take the cats.
send
Yeah.
fucking pet animal control over to fucking see what's going on with your fucking cats. No, we don't fucking like that shit. So guess what? We're taking fucking control of your fucking cats. Now your cats live under the fucking state. And guess what? We're gonna put them in somebody else's fucking. Oh, you thought your cats were gonna stay together? No, your cat is going. All your cats are going to all different homes, and they're gonna all be raised differently. And maybe someday they'll all meet each other again if you can complete this cat plan that has 72 different points of things that you need to do in order to get your cats back. But before you do that, you first have to recognize that we have all the fucking power. Go ahead and fucking force people to keep having cats.
I'm just kidding. I'm just saying. It's true. No, I agree with you. I agree with you on that point.
Oh.
And I also agree that a cat is a cat from start to finish. You know what I'm
Then
saying?
you should have way more cats living in your house right now.
I should.
Like all these cats that keep getting taken,
No.
you should take the cat. Why?
Thank you.
Why not?
I'm all set. I have my own cats.
It doesn't matter. You stand behind the school of
I
thought.
have my own cats.
Support the other cats.
I
Fancy
do.
feast.
So, witch hunts and cats. Witches have been known to have cats as familiars for years. So it's very fitting that we talked about cats in this episode. I mean, I hear you. I think that, you know,
It's a very
it's very convoluted.
situation.
It's very convoluted, and I think a lot of times we oversimplify it based on our feelings and our beliefs.
100%.
And I just, you know, that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties into the witch hunt logic, right? Like,
and it definitely impacts, I think, the way that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people in the United States are feeling, and the way that people are responding to things.
Yes.
And the amount of violence that we're seeing.
Yes.
You know, like, I definitely just walking through the world or driving through the world, I'm like, what the fuck is everybody beeping at me for?
Yeah.
Like, the second
Yes.
the light turns
Yes.
green, the
Yes.
person behind me is on their fucking horn.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
that's not enough time for
Yeah.
me to move my foot
Yeah.
to the gas pedal.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I'm ready to go when
Yeah.
the light turns green.
It's
So for you to beep the horn on
I
me,
know.
like,
I know.
I don't know what you're doing back there.
That ties into that anxiety. People are so tightly wound up. They're living in fight or flight mode, which is a dangerous place to live because the decisions we are making are based off of perceived survival,
Right.
and not practicality, and not reason, and not, you know, humanity, right? And so I think that's where we get into like dangerous, spooky territory. Spooky.
This whole conversation was fucking spooky.
It was.
Especially your commentary.
It's okay. I am
Really.
always willing and able to provoke
To take in
thought
cats.
and
If you have a
conversation.
cat that needs someplace to go,
Listen,
call Diana.
adoption is very high on my bucket list.
It better be.
I will be taking in babies.
It better be under
just-
his eye.
I just gotta be in us. She's so fucking dramatic all the time. Can you? Don't forget to rate,
Dramatic
subscribe,
all
and,
the time, huh?
and review.
Yeah, review me. No, review her.
Happy
Actually, don't review me.
Halloween.
Review her ass. See what happens.
Review me.
I can't wait.
still be me.
We should put up a fucking poll.
Oh, that's a great
Social media
idea.
poll.
The clips from this episode. Anyway, we'll
Yeah.
talk about this later.
Let's get it started. Let's get started. When are people actually voting, by the way? Is it presidential election this November?
No, next.
It's next November? We have another year? The political ads are already happening.
It's just getting started.
Fuck.
Local elections are November 7th. So,
Local elections in the
so your mayor.
and next week. Local elections.
I'm gonna be the first in
10
line,
days.
and I already know who I'm fucking voting for.
Me, I don't.
What?
I don't.
You don't know who you're voting for? No. For
No.
mayor?
For mayor.
There's only two choices.
Scary.
One or the other one.
I think the other one. I'm gonna write on my ballot. Pick someone else. Pick someone else to do it. Pick someone else.
No, we
to do
can't
it.
do any. There could be no write-ins.
No, it's gotta be.
It's gotta be the other one.
I don't know. That's not. Anyway, we gotta go.
Listen,
Enjoy your Halloween, folks. Stay safe. Bye.
that's what? That's how you're ending this shit? I wasn't even ready to say bye.
We said rate, subscribe, and review already.
And participate in the meditation.
Oh yeah, that too.
Because you're gonna need it after Diana. Bye.
It's okay. I'm fine.